Hey squad, it's Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thanks so much for joining us today. I wanted to hop on this story early before it broke headlines, which it may or may not have done in some places. But this year, maybe even this month, India is expected to surpass China in population. So yeah, I know, right? It's crazy. This is something that to me is mundane because in my thinking, in my analysis, and the way that I see the pieces move on the chessboard, I always look to the future. I'm always kind of 2050-ish. So I've always been working with this massive Indian population. They're roughly 1.4 billion. Who knows exactly what the number is? I'm thinking if they think they're going to pass China, chances are they've already passed China. And I have seen India, and I appreciated India for being the largest population in the world. And now it's just a matter of time before making it actually official. But what I wanted to do is to quickly hop on, bring that to everybody's attention, and then talk about some of the ramifications that may ensue because of this major shift. I think this transition from China to India is going to be it's going to be new. So previously, if when I look at the major populations of the past, each one's been a little bit different. I think about the massive Soviet Union, the Soviet bloc, this multi-ethnic industrial power full of natural resources. The whole second world, U.S. has their fear, Soviet Union has their sphere. This nuclear gallivanting or this nuclear arsenal gallivanting around the world with their idea of communism and pushing their socialist ideology. While America did the same thing in the West with their capitalist ideology, this contention. Then when I look at China, I look at this Asian model, which was built not so much on this political dominance of ideas, but China rose up through the Asian models of exports, trades, get your money right. This was the Asian model. Whether you're looking at Singapore, Korea, Japan, so on and so forth, China did it best because China was the biggest. But getting your money right, special economic zones, trade relations, investments, this was a different approach than the Soviet Union. And China having their billion plus people, they drove the man. They say, look, we're gonna put our people, we're just gonna throw numbers at you. This has always been the Chinese way of competing. They're gonna work hard, but they're gonna throw the numbers at you. And just by the normal bell curve distribution, you're gonna have your hands full. For instance, America's a quarter the size of China's population. That means for every one American, there's going to be four Chinese people. So just that level of competition is something to keep up with. I always think the Japanese, the reason why they had the so-called lost decades, I don't like saying that phrase, but the reason why they never surpassed the U.S. economically is because I don't think they passed the U.S. demographically. So even today, the Japanese are about 100 million people. So that means that it's going to be roughly, for every one Japanese person, that's going to be three Americans. So it's just a level of industrial competitiveness at that level. And that's not even getting in the fact of the size of the countries. But Soviet Union was a big country. China's a big country. America a big country. India, not as big, but yeah, because you consider if you take the arable land that you can utilize, India is probably one of the largest countries in the world. If you just look at that metric alone, but you start throwing a lot of that open space, desert, tundra, you got to remember China is very restricted. The outside edges, northwest China, Tibet, Inner Mongolia, etc., etc., a lot of that is sparsely populated. And 90+% of the Chinese live in the center and on the coast to the east. Now, this still gives China a lot more space to work with. If you ever seen a city in China and you see a city in India, you can see how India is dominated. That whole South Asia is insane. Whether you go from Pakistan with over 200 million people, little Bangladesh with over 100 million people, Sri Lanka, a small island off of India of 20+ million people, and the big dog of India with 1.4 billion plus. So you have this China, which was built around economics and exports and strong economic growth rates and political consolidation. They, like I said, they weren't trying to be out there pushing their way of thought on anybody. They were just really trying to get theirs the easiest way possible. And their sales pitch was, you do you, and we're going to do us. You can go ahead, whatever you rule. I was just reading a story about North Korea. I don't know what the heck's going on in North Korea, that place. But China is right next door to it. China probably has heaps of sway with North Korea. Not probably. China does have heaps of sway with North Korea. But how many times do you see China chastising North Korea? Even though there's no real reason, because nobody's going to invade North Korea because they know the Chinese are going to come over the border. They're not going to let you invade North Korea at this point in time. But North Korea still does crazy stuff for no reason. So, but the Chinese they're not ones to be out there out front chastising. They're doing this whole we get along with everything spiel. I think it's totally different. It's not that they get along with everybody. It's just that they're very focused on securing what they need for their people. And anything else that goes on, I think, I'm not going to say is irrelevant to them, but as long as it doesn't mess with their pipeline, they're good. So it's not going to be like America or the Soviet Union where they're all in your business trying to get you to live a certain type of life or acquiesce to certain preconditions, etc. Chinese just want to get access and utilize what they have. Now, India, this is going to be interesting, seeing how they take on the world model. When you're the largest country in the world, you can't hide. You can't sit behind. You can't swim in the wake. India is going to have to put themselves out there and assert claims. I also think that this is going to make China a little insecure, not from that it needs to be insecure, but just from a psychological point of view. The Chinese, one thing they are is very prudent and very security minded. I think that's one of the reasons we've been seeing this escalation and tension with Taiwan. There's really no reason to talk about this Taiwan. Even the United States recognized Taiwan as a part of China or recognized that there is one China. But you start seeing this escalations, and I think China is very insecure, as it should be given its position. Not necessarily because of the India demographic change, but this just makes India a little bit more of a problem. You see, where China sits is in East Asia. And East Asia, more or less outside of North Korea, you could say China does have industrial goods, such as, but they do import, such as coal and cheap energy, hydropower, etc. But you gotta remember, China also sitting on a big desert to the north. You have these breakaway regions, or like I said, these sparsely outlying regions. I also think China has a lot of territory that they really want to reclaim, that they naturally see as theirs. But they are very energy hungry. There's not going to be a big energy producer in East Asia. So all that energy has to come from the West or across the Pacific, but primarily from the West, like the Middle East. And I think that's one of the reasons you're seeing them really working on those relationships in the Middle East. But what sits between China and the Middle East? India. So I think naturally, if you have these resources that you need, and in between you and those resources is the most populous country on the planet, that might spark a little insecurity. As well, India flanked Central Asia, which China finds very valuable, and also flanked Southeast Asia, where China also finds very valuable. So pretty much anything outside of that Pacific realm, if you go west, you're running into India, whether India influences directly or indirectly. Now, as far as India, they're a value add player. Like their industrial numbers are not probably going to blow you away. They're highly populated. They have very low urbanization rates. That means for this level of the playing field, America's roughly around 80 something percent urbanization. China's roughly around 60% urbanization, 60 something percent. India's around the mid 30% urbanization rate. So they really haven't even cracked the high level of efficiency. What has driven India's economic growth is that they're highly competitive, hard nosed um, industrialists as far as their hard nosed workers. Plenty of Indian diaspora rise through the ranks to become a very prominent economic dominant minority, as the saying goes, in other countries. And they're value added player. Do they got diamonds? No. But can they cut the hell out of diamonds? Yes. Do they have oil? No. But can they refine the heck out of oil? Yes. So India play has always been value added. And I'm also seeing some of these inadvertent alliances come about as well. The other day, it was a little bit too many conversion circles between Iran, Russia, and India, especially starting off in that Armenia situation, which is going on with Azerbaijan. So you get a situation where you have India, Russia, and Iran. That, to me, those three countries solve a lot of problems for each other. India gives Russia a market. Russia can give India insight to military goods. You got a big arsenal of resources in Iran. So I think those three countries actually solve a lot of each other problems, but it's nothing formal with those. But I always watch the Crip Six: China, Russia, India, Iran, Pakistan, and Turkey. But I keep reading about India doing some forays in the Pacific. I don't know why. I don't think India have any real security interests out east. Anything they do out there is going to be seen as antagonistic to China. And it's just, I think India, if they just go on this course, they're going to find themselves in a stronger and stronger position as opposed to taking an antagonistic course with China and forcing a premature confrontation. Because China is going to double down on their organization, their strength of their state, their military. The things that India don't excel at right now, primarily organization, China does excel at. China is moving in one place, they're going in the same direction. So India's not there yet. They still got a lot of things going on at that point. Still got a lot of efficiencies on the table. One of the worst female labor participation rates in the world outside of a Muslim country. It's pretty disappointing. And it wouldn't be a big problem if it wasn't 600 million women in India. So you have this situation with that aspect of it as well. Just developing that society that's going to allow India to fire on all gears, which is going to make them really, really dangerous. So I'm going to look out for India, see what they do. Very interesting country. It's a world unto itself. And congratulations, India, for being number one. And hope you do nothing but good things with it. And it'd be interesting to see the West, China, and India compete for ideological hearts and minds in this world and give developing countries different approaches on how to develop best on their cultures. So that's my thoughts. I'd like to hear your comments on this. Please like, share, subscribe, comment below. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks for joining us. Until next time, take care. Bantu up.